Hello everyone, my name is Ahmad Abdellatif, and together with my colleagues, we would like to welcome you all to this presentation on our recent work that attempts to understand the various challenges that face chatbot developers. Nowadays, chatbots are popular and used for a variety of services in different domains, such as healthcare, transportation, and security. In fact, experts predict that most of the user service interactions will be done through chatbots. Why is that? This is due to the chatbot benefits in reducing costs, time, and effort. Those benefits have drawn the attention of many practitioners to the chatbot domain. We can actually look at the number of chatbot-related posts on Stack Overflow and notice that the chatbot domain has dramatically increased in popularity in the last couple of years. However, we are not fully aware about the challenges that face chatbot developers. Understanding those challenges is critical because they allow us to provide more effective tools that help in chatbot development and to improve the chatbot quality. For example, by providing testing frameworks and techniques to test the chatbot, and to increase the adoption of chatbot among users. So, in this work, we want to understand the challenges that face chatbot developers. To answer this question, we designed our study to answer 3 sub-questions or research questions. First, we need to identify the topics that developers are discussing or talking about. Then we want to understand the different kinds of questions that developers ask in order to identify the nature of challenges encountered during chatbot development. And finally, we need to identify the issues that are more frequently encountered by the chatbot developers. To answer our research questions, we use Stack Overflow to understand the challenges of chatbot development, as it is the most prominent question answer websites where millions of developers share their experience there. So we download the Stack Overflow dump, which it has by that time 18 million questions and 28 million answers. Next, we start by extracting all posts from the dataset that has a tag chatbot, which results in around 2,000 chatbot-related posts. To expand our dataset by adding more chatbot-related posts, we extract all the tags that coexist with the chatbot tag from those posts resulted in the previous step. We had around 1,000 coexisting tags with the chatbot tag. However, we noticed that some tags could add noise, such as Java and C#, because the posts of such tags can contain posts that are unrelated to chatbots. Therefore, in the next step, we removed those tags and we ended up having 22 chatbot-related tags. Using those 22 tags, we extract 4,000 posts that will constitute our chatbot dataset. Next, we pre-process the chatbot posts to filter out the irrelevant information from the text. And finally, to identify the topics that are discussed by chatbot developers on Stack Overflow, we use the latent Dirichlet allocation (LDA) modeling technique. LDA groups the posts in our dataset into a set of topics based on the word frequencies and their co-occurrences in the posts. Applying LDA on our datasets results in 12 chatbot unlabeled topics. So, to answer our first research question, we need to label the topics generated from the LDA. So 3 of our authors labeled the topics with a title that best represents the post of that topic. In particular, each of us individually inspected 20 keywords and examined at least 30 posts randomly. These are the 12 labeled chatbot topics. Here we can notice that developers are talking about different topics, such as how to design and manage the chatbot conversation with the user, and how to design the chatbot user interface and managing the chatbot responses. We observe that these 12 chatbot topics can be grouped into 5 categories. The first category is the integration category. This category deals with the integration between chatbot platforms, APIs, and websites. The next category is the natural language understanding. This category contains posts related to understanding what the user is saying by using intents and entities, as well as configuring the NLU, the natural language understanding platforms and their models. For example, one developer asks, how can I improve the accuracy of chatbot using Rabe platform? The third category is the development. The posts of this category are related to building chatbots using different development frameworks, such as Microsoft Bot Framework. The next category is the user interaction. This category contains posts about conversation design and generating reply messages to the user. And the last category is the user input. The posts of this category are related to validating and storing the user input. Next, we want to understand the most pressing chatbot topic among the developers. To measure the popularity for each topic, we use 3 metrics similar to the prior work. The first metric is the average number of views on the posts of the topic. The next metric is the average number of Stack Overflow users that mark the post as favorite. And the last metric is the average number of votes given by the Stack Overflow users. We find that the highest average of views and favorite topic among the community is the chatbot creation integration, which falls under the integration category. On the other hand, posts related to the intents and entities topic have on average the highest number of votes compared to other chatbot topics. After understanding the most interesting topics to chatbot developers, now we want to examine the types of questions that they ask in each chatbot category. To achieve that, for each category, we sample posts randomly. Then we label the posts into 4 different types. The first type is the how, which has the posts that ask about a method to implement something. The next type is why, which includes posts where the developer asks about the reason behind something. And the what type has the posts where the developer is asking for more clarification. And if the posts do not fall under any of the above types, we assign it as other type. The results show that most of the chatbot posts are asking about how to implement, about approach to implement a specific feature. And we noticed 25% of the chatbot posts are asking about a reason behind something. And finally, 12% of the posts are asking about general information, such as which chatbot development framework is better to implement my chatbot. Given that we know the popular topics and their types of posts, now we want to investigate the difficulty of answering posts in each topic. To measure the difficulty of topics, we mainly use two measures: the percentage of posts that have no accepted answers, and the median time in hours for questions to get an accepted answer. These metrics may be not the only way to measure the difficulty, but we use them for two main reasons. First, they are handy to be calculated and have been proposed and used in a prior work. We find that topics related to training chatbot models, such as model training, intents, and entities, are the most difficult topics in the chatbot development, while the most popular topic, which is chatbot creation integration, has the largest share of unanswered posts. Up to this point, we know what are the different chatbot topics that developers are talking about on Stack Overflow, the different kinds of questions that developers are asking, and the difficulty of the topics. Now we want to dig deep to identify the areas where the research community should focus their efforts in order to address the most challenging and depressing issues that face chatbot developers. To help identify the most pressing issues, we present the topics in terms of their popularity and difficulty. We use the average number of views as the proxy for popularity in the y-axis, and the percentage of posts without accepted answers as a proxy for difficulty in the x-axis. These are the easiest and least popular chatbot topics, where the size of the bubble or circle represents the number of posts for a particular topic. And a more famous topics are related to the chatbot development frameworks and technologies, and related to conversation design and managing the conversation between the user and the chatbot. The top right corner of the figure are the most popular and difficult topics. These topics are related to chatbot creation, integration, and training the chatbot in natural language understanding models to better understand the human text. We believe that the future research needs to focus on developing techniques and tools to help developers to easily train the chatbot models. Also, we encourage the chatbot community to devise better tutorials and documentations aiming to reduce the entry to barrier for developing chatbots. So to conclude the presentation, first, we discuss the motivation of our study and why it's critical to understand the challenges that face chatbot developers. Then we present the methodology to collect the dataset. We find that there are 5 main chatbot categories that developers are talking about. And finally, we present where the chatbot community should focus on for the future research. At the end, we would like to emphasize that while the chatbot domain is surely on the rise, it is still in its infancy stage. We hope that our work here will help highlight the challenges of chatbot development in the attempt to push the domain into a maturity. Thank you for listening.